And we'll continue from here.
Christoph, let me ask you, why do you think that Truman has never come close to discovering the true nature of his world until now?
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
The Hague for Christoph. Hello.
Hi, Christoph. I'd just like to say one thing. You're a liar and a manipulator, and what you've done to Truman is sick.
Well, we remember this voice, don't we? How could we forget?
Let's go to another call. What do we
No,
have?
no, it's fine. It's fine, Mike. I love to reminisce with former members of the cast. Sylvia, as you announced so melodramatically to the world, you think because you batted your eyes at Truman once, flirted with him, stole a few minutes of airtime with him to thrust yourself and your politics into the limelight, that you know him? That you know what's right for him? You really think you're in a position to judge him?
What right do you have to take a baby and turn his life into some kind of mockery? Don't you ever feel guilty?
I have given Truman the chance to lead a normal life. The world, the place you live in, is the sick place. Sea Haven is the way the world should be.
He's not a performer. He's a prisoner. Look at him. Look at what you've done to him.
He could leave at any time. If his was more than just a vague ambition, if he was absolutely determined to discover the truth, there's no way we could prevent him. I think what distresses you, really, caller, is that ultimately Truman prefers his cell, as you call it.
Oh, that's where you're wrong. You're so wrong, and he'll prove you wrong.
Well, aside from...
It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The Matrix.
Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What truth?
That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back.
Right now, we're inside a computer program?
Is it really so hard to believe? Your clothes are different, the plugs in your arms and head are gone. Your hair has changed. Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self.
This isn't real.
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. This is the world that you know. The world as it was at the end of the 20th century. It exists now only as part of a neural interactive simulation that we call the Matrix. You've been living in a dream world, Neo.
Okay. And I should probably, there we go. And so you can see those same elements in the movie. And in both clips, they talked about prisons. Yes, Rena? Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, it looked like I was frozen. I couldn't tell, so sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, so with prison, and in both of them, and in the Matrix, there's a theme of wanting to stay in the prison. And we often choose to stay in this prison, the shadows of ourselves. Freeing ourselves from that is difficult. It's challenging. It can be very scary and debilitating at times to even face a lot of these things and understand them. So this is a lot of the work that I do with different clients and working forward, but there's more to it than that as well. So at this point, I think I'd like to ask, we'll hold off on that for just a second. So just to go through a couple more things before we come back around to the truth I asked you to write. So here we have the dichotomy of uniqueness. And this is where we get into the ways in which we stay inside the prison. We have two conflicting thoughts in our mind. One, typo, but we're all human. We're not all the human, we are all human. So we're all human and everyone is different. And these are conflicting thoughts that often bash heads against each other when we're trying to think about ourselves. We can generally agree on statements like, we all love, feel pain, and stress about life. Everybody has these sensations. Everybody wants to have a happy family. Everybody wants to have a good life. Everyone wants to, we have a common core to humanity that binds us. These are all very common ideas. But we also have conflicting ideas that everyone has their own path. We can't know what's best for others. Everyone's got their own opinion. And this goes back to what we're talking about opinion. Just because there's multiple right answers to something doesn't make everything an opinion, doesn't make everything unknowable. And so how do we make this separation? How do we know what is something that is unique to us and special and sacred to who we are, and what is just a common trait of the human condition? Everyone ends up making the same delineation in different ways because we don't have the background to understand where this is. This comes into contention because then we use this as an excuse. Because when we're confronted with something that's negative about ourselves, it's something we're doing to ourselves that we shouldn't, if we're living a lifestyle that isn't beneficial to who we are as human beings, we then say, well, everybody's different and you don't know me. You don't know what's best for me. You don't have advice for me because I'm unique and different. When really it's on the side of, well, everybody's human. But yet we use as a defense tactic to not have to look at ourselves, to not have to look past the shadows. And we have to understand and have some humility that maybe we don't have a clear idea of where that separation line is between those two. And this is where you saw the title is A Scientific Mindset. When you have a huge population of people, when you have millions, billions of people all going through the same things, that's something that science can study. That's something that psychology can come to conclusions about. And we don't always like the conclusions that those say, but they can guide us to better ways of being, better ways of cultivating that uniqueness that we have. But if we ignore the common core and we try to deflect against it, then we end up just spinning in the same trap over and over again. And this is why we have to have humility and take in the data. And one of the ways in which we justify this, well, it's not all humanities, this is special to me, I'm just different than everybody else, is the danger of just. This is an outlawed word. When I used to teach, this was an outlawed word in my classroom. And just in a particular way, it's just what I like. It's just how the world works. It's just how I think. I'm just sad. So when you use just in this capacity, it's simply a way of shutting down a conversation with yourself or a conversation with another person. It's a way of not thinking deeper. I don't want to think about this topic, so I'm just going to throw just in there so I don't have to think about it anymore. it allows us to not have the depth of understanding of how we built that truth, of how we built that conclusion. It allows us to use the belief bias and start with the conclusion and work backwards, because then we don't have to think about how we got there. And I would advocate for everyone to stop using the word just in this way. Unfortunately, we use the word just in many different ways in the English language. So in this way, stop using it. Because whenever you go to use it, what you're doing is trying to shut down a conversation with someone else or with yourself. Okay, so what I would ask everyone to do now is on that same piece of paper that you wrote your truths on, think about, you might need to add some, or maybe it's one of the 6 you wrote down already. How many of them would you say, if you were to look at it, there's a just that you could put in there? When you talk about, I'm just a positive person, I'm just a competitive person, I'm just self-questioning about myself. You might not be one of the 6, but somewhere we all have these justs. So think for a moment, take a moment and think about where it's, I'm just. Where have you said that in the last couple of months or weeks? Or you could say that.
Are you looking for a response, or was this?
Just giving people time a minute to think, to write. Okay, that's a good one. I'm just tired. Which might be true, but we're still not thinking about why we're tired. What are the causes and conditions that led us to be tired? I'm just waiting. And so that's a good one. Waiting for what? Okay. Okay. So with that said, let's jump on. A little bit more to go here that I hope this is beneficial to everybody. Everybody have any thoughts about that? Anything they wanted to share about I'm just? Or their experience with it?
Are you just saying the danger of using just when it comes to like being a denial pattern is not a good way of using it? Like if it's used for avoidance or justification or minimizing? Minimizing
the causes. It's not a denial because it might be something positive. We could use just for something positive. I'm just a winner. I'm just awesome. So it can go in the opposite direction. It can lead into egoism as well. So it doesn't have to be negative, right? It is.
Yeah, which would still be denial, right? It would still be denial of the other side of being a winner.
Yeah, it ignores the other side, but it in addition to being denial, it just denies yourself the opportunity to look at how that formed. Because it might be accurate. It is possible that the conclusion might be accurate. You might actually be a winner perpetually over and over again, like consistently 90% of the time, maybe you are a winner. Maybe there's only 10% of the time you're not, right? But if you never think about it, you don't really have that self-understanding of how you got there. So it allows us to not have to break ourselves down into the individual pieces that make who we are.
Okay. So we're just talking about it as a limiting perspective. When we use this word, if it's limiting our perspective,
yes,
then we want to avoid using it. Okay.
That's the interesting thing too, is words and how you aren't even aware that you're using it. And maybe you're using it all the time, but you don't hear it. It's like not seeing the gorilla.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear yourself saying, I'm just.
Yes, it just comes out when we're speaking. So we get into patterns of speech as well. phrases that we say over and over again. And this is a whole nother level of looking at it. The linguistics that we choose to use has an effect on how we think. And when we use the same catchphrases, the same statements over and over again, it forms how we perceive everything around us. Rather than we're just supposed to be a tool to communicate what we think. And what happens instead is the words are a tool for forming what we think. Okay. I hate it when this happens, but it's still functional. I have lost my mouse cursor. So I can no longer see where it is. Okay. So what does this ultimately lead to? It leads to a limited perspective of who we can be. And in this chart here, you can see there's circles of who we are today, who we have been, and who we can and ought to be in the grand sense. What is our truest self? And we limit that perspective by creating these boundaries around who we can be. And that comes through all those distortions and those shadows on the wall and answering just because it's scary to step out beyond that. And when we step out beyond that, we're not sure how it's going to go. And so we safely stay within these boundaries and we don't step out beyond them. Whenever, especially when we have a bad experience with something, we then retract inward and we set these boundaries that might not be right for us. So to really see who we are, we need to accept and step outside of those boundaries that we create and those limitations. So here, we have to accept that there are people that might know us better than we know ourselves. In fact, some of the worst people to know ourselves is ourself. Despite what you hear, I know me the best. That's often not true because we can only know ourselves from inside. We can know who we've been. We can know who we are. We can't know who we can be. And that's where it's easier when we're younger, but they still exist when we're older. Mentors and teachers and people and friends that have been around a long time can see what we can be, what our potentials are, what our intrinsic drives are. And we have to be more humble to say, all right, I know who I am, but I'm not very good at knowing who I can be because of all these distortions. And we have to be, again, humble about how to actually take in the advice of others. And a way to do that is through approaching this from a scientific standpoint. And so in science, there's a misunderstanding about how truth is formed in science as well. So how many things, there's a question for everybody, Tara, don't answer, you saw this. How many things have been, I think you saw this if you were there that day. How many things have been proven in the history of modern science? Correct, Chastity. 0. 0 things have ever been proven in the history of science. It is not a thing. If you read any peer-reviewed science journal, they do not use the word prove or proven anywhere. It is not a thing in science. It is a thing that the news anchors and the media tells you has been done. It's not something a scientist would ever say. It is 0. And there's a reason for that. Because you can't actually prove something true. You can only fail to disprove something. And that's a very big difference. We can only ever fail to disprove. And so in science, if you have enough experiments that fail to disprove, then maybe you're getting on to something true. But you can never be 100% because maybe there's another experiment. For something to be proven, you have to test it in every possible situation in every possible way, which is an infinite number of things. And we can't do that. So the best we can do is fail to disprove. And if we fail to disprove enough times, then we can kind of conclude that we found something true. Another misconception is that in science, there are facts. There are facts, but facts are the data. That's it. I collected these numbers or I observed these observations. That's the only facts there are in science, nothing else. And theories don't evolve into facts because that's not how it works. What theories are explanations for collections of data, collections of facts. It is how we explain the data we see. So theories don't evolve into facts. No matter how many times we fail to disprove a theory, it doesn't become a fact. It just stays a theory. It's just one that's been impossible to disprove. And this is the attitude we need to take for ourselves. Is everyone okay if I bust time by a couple minutes? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to play another video here that kind of exemplifies this fact. It's a fun little one. You can play along and see if you can guess the pattern of numbers.
I'm going to give you guys three numbers, a three-number sequence, and I have a rule in mind that these three numbers obey. And I want you to try to figure out what that rule is. But the way that you can get information is by proposing your own set of three numbers, to which I will say, yes, that follows my rule, or no, it doesn't follow my rule, and then you can propose what you think the rule is. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so here are the three numbers. 2, 4, 8.
2, 4, 8.
You don't need to continue the sequence. You can propose a totally different sequence, whatever you want to propose, and I will simply say yes or no. That follows my rule.
2, 4, 8. 16, 32.
16, 32, and
64.
Those also follow my rule.
Okay.
What's the rule? What are you thinking?
Multiply by 2.
That is not my rule.
What?
That's not my rule. But you're allowed, if you want, propose three other numbers.
3, 6, 12.
3, 6, 12.
3, 6, 12 follows my rule.
10, 20, 40.
10, 20, 40.
That follows the rule.
Yeah, I'm still multiplying by 2.
I know. I know what you're doing. And yes, it follows my rule, but no, it's not my rule.
5, 10.
10 and 20.
Follows my rule.
100.
200. 400.
Follows my rule.
500, 1,000, 2,000.
Follows my rule.
Want me to keep going?
But do I just keep going? You're going to tell me your rule?
Am I doing it the wrong way? Am I approaching this the wrong way?
You're totally fine,
Okay.
but you're approaching it the way most people approach it. Like, think strategically about this. You want information.
Yeah.
I have information. The point of the three numbers, right, is to allow you to figure out what the rule is.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to give you the numbers that I don't think fits the sequence and then see what you say. So I'll say 2, 4, 7.
Fits my rule.
So whatever I propose is right?
So is your rule like you can propose any number? So the rule is anything we say is yes.
No.
Damn it.
But you are on the right track now. Hit me with three numbers.
3, 6, 9.
Follows my rule.
Oh, that didn't follow my rule.
This is good, right?
5, 10, 15.
That follows my rule.
What? Oh. Really?
Yeah.
I don't believe this.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Follows the rule.
What about 7, 8, 9?
Follows. Yes, that follows the rule.
8, 16, 39.
Fits the rule.
Excellent.
But we're no closer to the rule. I want you to get to the rule. How about 1, 7, 13? Follows the rule.
What?
11, 12, 13.
How does this
follows
make
the rule.
sense?
10,
I don't
9,
know how
8.
to do this.
Does not follow the rule. 10, 9, 8 does not.
Oh, so is it all in ascending order?
Booyah.
Okay.
Up top. Yes, first
that
ones
what it
to get
is?
it. You guys nailed it. That's the rule. That's the rule. Increase numbers in increasing order. Numbers in ascending order.
Oh, so much
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 15, 25. Doesn't matter. Any numbers in ascending order. I was inspired to make this video by the book The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. Now, the black swan is a metaphor for the unknown and the unexpected. I mean, in the old world, the theory was that all swans were white. So each instance of a white swan would make you think, yeah, that theory's pretty good. But the point is, you can never prove a theory true. And in fact, when people found Australia, they realized that there were black swans. What was interesting for me was that everyone I spoke to came up with a rule very early on and then only proposed numbers that fit with that rule they were thinking. I was looking for you guys to propose a set of numbers that didn't follow your rule and didn't follow my rule. I was looking for you guys not to try to confirm what you believe. You're always asking something where you expect the answer to be yes, right? Like you're trying to get at it. Yeah.
But instead you want to get the no.
You want to get the no because that's much more informational for you than the yes. Like if everything's
No,
giving
that
a
is
yes.
true. That is really true once you say that.
That is what's so important about the scientific method. We set out to disprove our theories. And it's when we can't disprove them that we say, this must be getting at something really true about our reality. So I think we should do that in all aspects of our lives. If you think that something is true, you should try as hard as you can to disprove it. Only then can you really get at the truth and not fool yourself.
Okay. So, and this is where we get into what I propose for you. So we need to think about ourselves like an experiment, like I was talking about in the scientific method, because what he just described is how we approach our own self-understanding. Those truths you wrote at the beginning most likely came from a process of asking questions that you were looking for the yeses for. And we need to start looking at ourselves like an experiment. And so what that means is seeking to disprove your self-truths, because what are your self-truths? We construct those based in the data and evidence, the experiences we've had in life, but it's very biased into what we choose. They are theories. Our truths are theories. And if we're not including the right sets of data, if we're not including the right facts, the right experiences, then those truths are going to be inaccurate. So when you have a self-truth, particularly one that's negative about yourself, this is where you want to seek to disprove it. Try to show that it's wrong. And it's only if you can't that you start to say, okay, well, what do I do about this deficiency? Or what do I do about this lacking? How can I improve this? We want to look at it in a different way. We want to approach ourselves scientifically. And another way that we can do this is take data on yourself. Don't rely on your memory and emotions alone to define what that is, because a lot of times that comes from one or two experiences. I don't know about you, but for a long time, if I went to a restaurant and had a bad first experience, never again, never setting foot in that place ever again. Well, that's a single data point I'm making a decision on for the rest of my life to never go to that restaurant. Is that really fair? I mean, not for the restaurant, but just in general. Maybe I'm denying myself of really good experiences and really good food later on. I mean, there are exceptions to this. If you saw, animals and such running around, maybe that's not so good, but, we should try to have multiple data points for the same thing, the same experiences. Just because we say, I didn't have a good time the first time, try it again. Or I wasn't good at that, or I took a class in that and I did badly. So since I got a bad grade in that class when I was 16, I'm bad at that forever now that I'm 45. Does that make a lot of sense? Not really, right? So keep a log of the data. You could even call this log of data experiences like a journal. Writing is critically important to this. So keep a log of these experiences you have. Push yourself to step outside and try to prove yourself along and keep the data through a journal. And finally, make multiple trials of the same experience. Try it in different ways. See if it's there. Maybe it isn't for you. Maybe it's not something you're good at. Maybe it's not something you're really motivated for. But you can test that multiple times in different ways. And then finally, one way that I'll give you this time, which is the core of when I work with clients, when I work in classes, doesn't matter what it is the core of how to get past those shadows and distortions. This takes a lot of understanding, but there's a core to where a lot of these distortions come from, and they're existential in nature. So death meditation and reflection. Thinking about meditation, often on the limitedness of your life. And I was going to go through an example of what death meditation looks like, but maybe we'll start off with that next time I speak instead, since I'm already over time. We'll go through that. But this is quintessential to getting out of the cave and seeing the sunlight, is really being self-confronting about your own mortality. If you don't do this and do this regularly, you cannot see clearly in any aspect of your life. It is a fundamental thing and something that our culture avoids with every fiber in its being, to avoid thinking about mortality in any way. And it's not healthy at all. So I'll explain that in the next time we're here. And we'll actually go through a sample of what this type of meditation looks like, and how you can practice it in different ways. But for me, on the horizon, I have some announcements coming in terms of workshops coming up in July that are going to be more active and engaged in developing some of these skills. And you can do that by signing up for my email newsletter, joining my Facebook group, which I just started. So there's not anything there. It's a great time to start up, and following me on Instagram and Facebook, because I do this through my own work at Humanity Consulting, where I do a lot of this. And I can put this into the chat as well. if you are interested in just keeping informed about what I do. So if I can, thank you. If I can answer any questions you have right now or thoughts, I love feedback and comments about what you felt about this topic of the experience or how it relates to you.
I had done a lot of research on post-traumatic stress growth, and it's interesting because I'm actually going through something now that I had a really early traumatic experience, and then I kept having the same traumatic experience throughout my childhood. And so at different stages, new truths were concreted in. And it got more negative and more serious. And what's interesting is now that I look back, it's now the body sensations, the emotions are like coming out that weren't out when I was little because they were too big. You know how they say kids have too big of emotions. Yeah. And so now it's like coming out and you're looking back and you're saying, wow, I didn't realize, because you were blind to, like you were saying, all these perceptions and truths you created, you believed were true. Mm-hmm. And to see them playing out over your life is very eye-opening and almost sad, because you're like, wow, look what you've done, and you didn't even realize you were doing it. So I've found very profound work and very interesting work.
Thank you. Yeah, especially when they're early events. I mean, at any point, but especially when early, we have to find ways of getting to the next day and coping. And so we create these boundaries and these explanations for things that can be destructive, but they're what we've got to work with, especially that early on. Our tool sets are limited, and it takes some time to work into a bigger tool set to get there. And so that's what getting past that and working toward the growth part of it takes time. And sometimes it doesn't happen until much later in life. But the goal is that we get there, right? And we figure it out.
Right. Yeah, there's great research coming out on trauma. Mm-hmm. It's really fascinating. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Anybody, Marilyn?
Yeah, I'm curious because what I find fascinating about you is you said that you have normally, we go through some sort of trauma, some sort of something, and then that's how we grow from it. But you're saying that we can eliminate that part and grow. And I'm curious, like, if we're going to be diving deeper into that part, because I would love to get the growth without the trauma. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So it doesn't eliminate trauma from happening later. I mean, we can't control a circumstance that happens, but I can say from the research and the data I've taken afterward, when you do go through a guided growth process, it does prepare you and give you greater resiliency to deal with those traumas when they do come up, because you're already at a point of growth. You already know what to expect. You already know what's going to happen. You're at that higher position already. So it softens the blow when tragedy strikes. So yes, I will be going more into it. Like I said, some of the other stuff you're going to see coming out in the near future is also going to give other opportunities for that also. So I'm going to be making announcements about opportunities to engage in some of that as well. But this has been my research for 10 years, not just research. I've been implementing this in schools, because the earlier you can teach this, the better. Down to a certain point, there's a certain age limit to engage with some of this. But if you can teach people this growth early enough, high school and college age, then it prepares people much more readily and sets them on a track for a good direction, a healthier place. So this is my life's work. I'm definitely going to go more into it. Anything else, Chastity?
Yeah, thank you. I have a quick question. So, yes, I got into this 90-day challenge because I do want to like shift this truth that there's excess weight on my body, or that my body is more sluggish or has less energy with this excess weight. So how can I, like you said, like how can I disprove that theory or disprove that? You know what I mean?
What is the theory? What is the truth you want to test?
That I'm overweight.
Okay. Practically speaking. You mean?
Yeah.
Right. So that's going to come down to setting examples, because it's not about, in this case, it's not about being overweight, right? That's so this goes into that distortion of kind of distorted realities, intentional distortions that are put in front of you, right? So forget about being overweight. That's what's been given to you. That's the falsehood that's been given to you in a way. The question is, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? What do you feel is being stopped by the weight?
Increasing my energy. Is being stopped by the weight? Like low energy? Like
so there's one thing, and potentially dropping some weight might increase your energy level. There are other ways to achieve that as well that could be done in combination with that. But if that's what matters, if that's what's important is the energy, then the self-truth that you are overweight, there's a judgment in being overweight. There's an emotional attachment to being overweight. But it's not about that piece. That's the false truth you're giving yourself, that you are overweight in a judgmental sense. It's about, what do you want to do with that? If you did lose weight, what would you be empowered to do that you're not capable of doing right now?
Wear a certain dress size?
Okay. And why is that important? Why is the dress size important?
Because then it's easier to buy clothes.
Okay. So there we hit a point. So maybe that is it. Maybe you want an easier time going to school.
Yeah, like freedom.
Okay. There's an emotional attachment to freedom as well. What do you mean by freedom? Freedom to do what?
Freedom to do and have experiences that I want, like if I wanted to do skydiving, that has a weight limit, or riding in a helicopter has a weight limit, or doing certain things like that. Roller coasters.
Okay, then there you go. So there's a place where there is a reason to lose weight, right? To have a greater opportunity for experience in skydiving and roller coasters and easier time at dress stores. None of that is contingent on a truth of you being overweight.
Okay. More to talk about later.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we're gonna cut off.
I apologize.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Please reach out to Dr. Steven separately to learn more. You know, he has all of those amazing things that he's working on, and he has classes too, which are great. So thank you so much, guys. Sorry about this. I'm going to figure out what's going on. Okay.
Bye. Good night, everyone. See you guys later.
Good night.